All right, we want to welcome all of you to the meeting. Yeah. We're going to go ahead and get started here. It's Thursday, November 3rd for Parks, Rec, and Trails Commission meeting for the City of Menifee. It is 6 p.m. And Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Commissioner Croy? Here. Commission Chair Zimmerman?
Here.
Commission Vice Chair Gidroyce?
Here.
Commissioner Rosen?
All right, and so let's go ahead and salute our flag, and if Commissioner Gidroyce would lead us, please.
And ready, and salute. I pledge allegiance to our flag, the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have any presentations?
No.
Okay, and that takes us to our meeting minutes. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at our minutes. And if there's any corrections, now would be the time. If there are none, we would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes as is. Minutes of October 20th.
All right, we have a motion and a second for the October 20th meeting minutes approval. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we are moving on to, we don't have any modifications to tonight's agenda, correct? All right, and so then
None.
no one's going to speak public comments, so let's go on to discussion items number 8. 8.1, Evans Park Concept Review. Can we have our Community Services Director give us an update on this discussion item, please?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. This item is one that I know that the Commission's been waiting for a little bit of time here. It's a first step in developing some land that we already own and also considering some land that we may be looking to acquire in the future. But this will lay out sort of the plans for how we want to proceed and also assist with funding opportunities and financing opportunities moving forward. The Evans Park site, as you may recall, was part of a land dedication provided to the city from KB Homes back in 2012. It included 3 parcels at the corner of Craig and Evans Road, and then additional parcels south of Craig at Evans Road. And so the area in question was partially usable and partially not usable due to a blue line stream and also a wash that continued along Evans Road. And so part of the master plan that was approved last year identified this as a future park site as well as opportunities to modify and expand so that it can be more usable for a full sports park experience. So on the screen, you see the aerial map of the area that we'd like to consider for park development. Only half of this, the southern half of the yellow box area, is actually owned by the city. The northern half is actually owned by partially by a development company and then partially by a private property owner. Oh, I got to turn that on. And so you may recall these design layouts that were originally done back in 2013 by RJM Design Group. The city had hired them to do this work, and there were 2 versions of it. One was with the park that was to be bisected by Craig Avenue. This wasn't ideal only because it tends to be difficult to have contiguous use of the park with main thoroughfare going through the middle. And then on the right-hand side was another option which really utilized the full 18-plus acres north of Craig. Now, again, this was done in 2013, and a lot has changed since then, including the Parks Master Plan. And so staff felt it was important to revisit this and re-engage RJM to try and come up with a new design in light of some of the program and facility deficits identified in the Master Plan. As a result, staff has met on site with RJM and reviewed a lot of the outcomes and findings of the master plan, which of course they assisted the city with, and came up with the following design concept. As you can see, It does include a couple of ball fields with maximum-sized overlays in the outfields. Both those playing types were identified as deficit areas for our facility needs in the city. Additionally, in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, which is going to be near the intersection of Craig and Evans Road, the inclusion of a aquatics feature, in this case a 50-meter competition-level pool with a aquatics building to house and operate from. This is an ideal opportunity considering that the high school next door does not have an aquatic facility and currently has to travel up to the drop zone in order to use their pool for their competitions. The same is true of Heritage High School. They do not currently have an aquatics facility. Aquatics facility was also top of the list, one of the top of the list items for the Parks Master Plan. And then continuing northward along Evans to the corner of Evans and Corson, there is inclusion of a skate park facility. This is designed or has the option to be designed with security in mind in light of a lot of the issues we've come across at the Audie Murphy Ranch Sports Park. There is the option to have that supervisor attendant building enclosed instead of a freestanding shelter structure like a picnic shelter, so that if monitored access to the site is necessary, we can accommodate that. Moving.
Stop for a second.
Sure.
So Marty, did you catch the location of that skateboard park on this plan?
Yeah.
Down in the left lower corner.
Do we have anything, excuse me, do we have anything that blows up that skate park so that we can actually see what it looks like?
When you say blows up, what do you
A
mean?
larger picture showing it only.
Well, no, the conceptual design, it only incorporates some general elements. If we were to get to the point of more in-depth design, which we would have to secure a firm to do that, then we would get into all of the specific features and elements that could go in there.
But how big is it?
Well,
I mean, I know the location where it's going to be based on the arrow, but how big is this area?
right, in your staff report, on the printout, there should be a scale. I think it's on that first attachment. And based off this scale, it's approximately 200 feet across the longest part of that oval.
So it's
It's sizable.
significant.
Yes.
Okay. All right, it doesn't show it that way, that's why I was,
Well, what I've put on the screen for you is cropped out just to maximize the area that's been designed. But in your attachment, you'll see the scale in the staff report that should give some better perspective. Some of the features that they have placed in here are done so in a way to encourage beginner use as you first enter the park, and then around the peripherals, the more advanced use. So that way, you don't have advanced users sort of running over beginners as they come in that gate.
yeah, that's smart. There's just one other question I want to point out. This pool that you put in there, you said it was 50 meters?
That's what's proposed.
No matter how you do this, that is going to be a losing proposition. It's going to cost the city a great deal of money that you are not going to get back. I am talking from experience now, and I can tell you that the county is in the process of getting rid of its water facilities. They've already turned, the district has turned it over to EDA. EDA is going to get rid of them, period. So that they have been a drain of about $1 million a year. It's going to cost the city a lot of money for which you're not going to get back.
Yes, we're very familiar. Both myself, Jason, and Joe have been involved in management of aquatic facilities in our respective prior cities and agencies. And yes, they are very expensive to run and maintain. We're aware of that. That's why the design and construction and ultimate operation of this facility is critical for us to have a good partnership with the school district. So you'll see later on in the presentation here a cost for the initial install, which we will certainly be using to try and go after grants and other sources of financing to try and get this done. But that also would then be something we talk to the school district about, not just for a joint use agreement, but also a joint construction agreement. So there are multiple ways to approach this to offset all those costs to be directly hit upon the city.
Good. Thank you.
Sure. Just some other items to highlight on this design. As you can see, we did incorporate parking along that peripheral. As we know, the school also has a shortage of parking, and if you've driven around there during school time or shortly before or after school, you'll know that there's really not a lot of place for students and teachers to park, and when parents come to pick up, it's even worse. And so this is another opportunity to partner with the district and give them some opportunities for overflow on a lot of the athletic venue uses and things like that. There wouldn't be any prohibition to students parking in this lot during the day because they could walk to the east to get to the campus if they needed to. Our perspective is that more activity, more presence in the park will actually help with enforcement and security. So if we continue sort of to the northeast, you see there's an inclusion of a full-size basketball court, shade structures, as well as a pedestrian plaza that sort of wraps around the existing ball field that's to the school's northwest corner. That currently is all dirt behind their backstop, and this would provide some permanent hardscaping for them to mobilize during their athletic events as well. So the flow of pedestrian traffic comes from the north side of the school and leads out onto that walking plaza, and then provides a nice thoroughfare into the park, inviting students in and teachers in. And again, joint use is really critical here. We would encourage the school to utilize the park for PE needs and all of their competitive sporting teams as well.
Robert, while you're on that subject, can I ask about access? So let's say there's the pedestrian plaza there, but it's supposed to support school property, a baseball diamond. Will there be a problem with having members of the public being able to enter the school property and vice versa?
So right now, there's actually a fence line there, and we would encourage the school to maintain that fence line. We agree. Every school in the city should keep a secure campus. This purely just provides an opportunity for a contiguous design and look and feel. So when school's not in session, those gates are open. People feel like they're all in the same place. It's likely that the school may want to run a tournament for softball or baseball. Well, gates are open, and people don't feel like, well, can I go over there? Yes, you can go over there. The gates are wide open, and the hardscape shows you that this is one facility.
Okay.
What I do want, two more things I want to highlight. If you go back to the south end of the park along Craig Avenue, you can see we've maintained the natural contours of the blue line that continues off. That's one of those components that we really can't change. And added a bridge crossing there to really a passive park area in the sort of southeast corner with picnic shelters, just for families to be able to relax and enjoy the scenery. And then even after school, when kids come to get picked up, they can walk down and wait there for their parents or whoever's going to give them a ride home. Again, more activity in the park we see as a positive.
Can I ask one more question?
Mm-hmm.
Is there access that's allowed along the south edge, along Craig Avenue, into that passive area? Or can you only get to it by going within the park and over the bridge?
You can get to it, the school's fence line does cross the Blue Stream and continues all the way down just as you see it along the property line.
Okay.
And then it terminates at that corner.
Okay.
The only other way to get into the passive area of the park is either from the sidewalk level at Craig or across the pedestrian bridge.
Okay, so from the Craig sidewalk, you can just walk, there's not going to be a fence along there?
Correct. Yeah, we will make sure there's access there.
Okay. And what about parking along Craig? Do we know if that's going to be an issue? Everyone's going to want to park there if they just want to get to that first shade structure?
Yeah, as of right now, the parking would be allowed along Craig. I think even today, they are permitted to park there, and we would encourage it because a lot of times when we reserve out these shelters, we want to make it convenient for families to be there, you know, for their birthday party or whatever else. Allowing street parking along these sides then also alleviates any overflow use of the interior parking lot.
Great, thank you.
So the other thing I wanted to highlight here is tentative track map 36803. This is the track that is just to the north of the of Coruscant, and which would be just to the north of Park site. Okay, this track map hasn't had movement recently, although we've been in communication with the applicant within the last 6 months, and just wanted to highlight that. Along Coruscant, the applicant will be required to essentially do the street improvement from the center line to the north, okay? Everything from the center line to the south, meaning to the property line or right-of-way line of the park, the city would be required to develop if we were to acquire those parcels on the north end of the park site. So I just want to make sure there's disclosure about that because that is going to be a cost, and there's already been some conversations with Public Works about using some Measure A dollars and other things to cover some of those. Ultimately, we're talking, you know, a couple years away, and we won't know the priorities at the time, but certainly that is something we'll have to consider. So if I go back to that map, if you go to the far left-hand side on the conceptual design, the street isn't shown on here, but what essentially would happen is where you see the sort of trail and the curb line meet up at the corner of Evans and Coruscant, that green area is actually going to be the asphalt, right? And so we would continue that all the way over to really the edge of the school property. And one of the things the school would have been conditioned to do is build the rest of Coruscant, at least from center line to their property line. That currently doesn't exist, so part of our joint construction agreement would have to include encouraging them to finish that component of their school construction.
Okay.
And so the big question is, what will this cost? And RGM did some analysis based off of today's costs for construction, materials, labor, and determined that a very, very conservative estimate on this would be $27 million with the 20% contingency based off what they've been seeing in the field lately. Now, I've looked through the estimate, and I do think it's a high figure, but I think it's safe to aim high because if the costs come in less, we're in a better place. But there are certainly a lot of high-end amenities in this park, and they do come with a price tag. So that really completes my overview of the design, and happy to answer any more questions or take any recommendations to modify this. This is certainly the time, like we do with any other applicant's submittals. Conceptual design at this stage in front of the commission is really open to, you know, any feedback you have.
Excellent. So I think the first one's coming from Commissioner Croy.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, a couple of questions. Can we go back to the track map just north of it? I have a question on that. I remember this track map at the city. The city was pretty adamant that this is pretty large lot development here, and that little park that's in the middle of that is kind of, because of the topography of the area. I remember there was some discussion. Can't we just not build that and maybe exchange that for put a couple other units in there with a little bit of redesign there? Maybe we can leverage that with this particular developer to help finance either the construction of the road or, you know, use those Quimby fees towards this park.
Yes, and the outcome of that in the comments back to the applicant was that the park was going to have to be an HOA facility. It was under our minimum acreage, which meant that they had to pay us the full value on the Quimby fees in lieu.
So we're getting the money no matter what.
Correct.
Okay, good good to know. Also, you did mention, if we could go back to the park schematic there, the swimming facility, I think it's, I understand Marty's position regarding costs and everything. What do high schools that partner with other, park agencies, how do they share that in that cost? And are there some examples?
Yes, actually, the agency I came from in Yucaipa did do a partnership with Crafton Hills College for a facility where both the college and the school the college and the city went and purchased what was called a Mirtha pool from, at the time, the city of Long Beach. It was essentially a stainless steel pool with a PVC liner, and it was the same pool that was used in the qualifying trials for the Olympics of, I'm going to get the year wrong, I'm sure, 2000 and, this would have been 2 Olympics ago or three Olympics ago. And so their joint construction agreement called for the city to pitch in, I think it was $200,000, the college to take care of the rest. And then there was an ongoing payment that the city paid to the college. I think it was $100,000 a year for 6 years. But as a result, the city had a certain amount of what we call water time during that time period. And so that water time was community use, could be used for the local high school to use it, or it could be used for just drop-in swim. It just really depends. So that's one example. Those deal points and negotiations will have to occur when we get to executing that agreement.
As a way to raise revenue, I grew up in Culver City, and we had a big swimming facility down at Culver Park. And I think we paid $1 to get in or something like that, some minimal charge. Maybe we should consider something like that. And my other comment is I like the idea of you have a restroom and concession area, and maybe the supervisor tenant building. Could we partner with Active or one of the other skating operations and put a pro shop in there? Because we've heard that that's a very desirable thing.
Yes, and let me kind of reflect on your first comment. Every aquatics facility that I've ever worked at or supervised, and everyone I've seen from another agency, always has a gate fee, precisely for the reason that Marty has mentioned. It's because the cost is so high and the subsidy from the city is high. So definitely getting into this pool, even from the community, is going to have a cost. The inclusion of a pro shop would likely be most effective at the supervisor attendant building. We would have to incorporate it over there. And depending on the outcome of City Council's consideration on the November 16th meeting, they will be reviewing the improvement ideas and supervision ideas that came out of this commission. They'll be reviewing those on the 16th, and will make a decision about whether they want to supervise the skate park or not. If they say yes and they prefer it to be done by an outside firm, then that would also apply to this skate park. We wouldn't treat them differently. They would be treated the same way.
I see. Okay. Well, that's good. This does this shows that we're learning as we grow here. So it's good. Thank you.
Okay, and let's go with Commissioner Gidroy first.
Looking at the needs assessment on the master plan, we have shortages coming up on baseball fields, soccer fields, and I was thinking 2 ball fields, maybe one of them could be eliminated and we could have a soccer field. It's a suggestion, but I think that the numbers, when you look at the assessment, there was more need for soccer fields than baseball fields. And I was wondering if the high school has a ball field that maybe they would share instead.
They do have a ball field. They have a softball and baseball field. What we've proposed here is 2 overlays. So you see the 300 by 150 fields. Those are actually large. That amount of multi-purpose space is larger than what is needed for a FIFA regulation-sized soccer field.
So we can switch back and forth.
Yes, and we did it this way intentionally, and this probably is a little deceiving as you see the 2 tones of green. The outfield of the ball field, the baseball field, is not a hard fence line.
Okay.
It just shows you the extent of play area.
I was thinking fence line when I looked at it.
Right, and so I wanted to make that distinction because anytime we put in a fence line, it really does limit use. And so what I've done in other agencies is required the little leagues or pony leagues or whatever other baseball or ball diamond use groups, during their season of play, they have the option to bring in their own temporary fencing on that outfield. And then when their season of play is done, we can open up that multi-purpose field space for any other type of use, football, soccer, flag football, whatever else it might be. So it's not restricted. Both of these fields are planned to be lit, and that's reflected in the budget that's within the staff report.
And the lighting would be suitable for either.
Correct.
Okay, great. The only other thought I wanted to put out there was, when we're talking about family picnic area, I'd like to see if there's a way to get the pool closer, because I'm sure folks would probably want to do that. And if you have to cross a bridge to get to it and you've got little kids, that could be a real issue. Parents would probably want to be at the picnic area and be able to observe their kids, not have to be separated.
So let me
I'm
propose.
not sure where to go with the pool, but you
Yeah.
follow what I mean?
Yes, I do, and so I'm curious if on the pool deck itself, there's those two cabana structures. Those would be actually picnic shelter structures. Again, they're in the fence line of the pool, though, and so in order to use those for an event or activity, you do have that pool cost to get in if you're a family. But the cabanas in that case would be reservable as well. If you're looking to have a standalone picnic shelter closer to the pool, it can be closer to that corner of Craig and Evans where some of those trees are. However, it would still have to remain on the outside of the fence line.
Okay. Well, something to consider, something to further think about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else, Marty?
Could you go back to the original picture that shows the general land around? Yes. I know I'm pushing, but outside of the area that's covered in yellow, is the land above it or any of the land below it available? I'm still looking for something big. And when I say big, I mean really big, like 50 acres. Is it possible, conceivable even, to try to envision buying some of the land above the yellow border or below it, just to increase the size?
So the land to the north is actually this tract map, 36803. So it is already accounted for and in the process of entitlement. The land to the west is already built out by KB Homes, and the land to the south is actually owned by the city, and that is intended to be the future home of City Yard. And so we're somewhat landlocked on where we can go and how much space we get. As I identified in the staff report, we have about total of 17.25 acres with this plan. And that's pretty much the maximum that we could build in this space, assuming we did the acquisition.
No offense to your yard, but could we put your yard somewhere else and at the same time incorporate whatever that land is into the park?
That is an option. It then really reverts back to the original design idea where Craig bisects the park.
Yeah, that's not good.
And the storm channel takes up that area where we've got soccer fields drawn on there, right?
Yeah, that's-
Correct. And-
That's no good.
Yeah, and I think this design, this was done again back in 2013, and they probably didn't really understand what was going to happen south of Craig at the time. I don't even know that that channel was constructed at that time. But, you know, to give you a good example, when I first got here, the first development agreement for the Menifee Town Center included soccer fields in the bottom of the Paloma Wash. definitely not something that could happen.
Can you go back to the aerial, please?
Thank you.
So just for our edification, if you go up to the northwest corner of Briggs and Holland, and there's a great, very deep water retention, kind of the end of the line for everything flowing there. So just so we understand then, so the direction of flow of this channel is actually flowing north to that, right?
I think it is. I haven't seen the contours to know, but that sounds right.
Okay. I was always wondering, is it going this way or is it flowing that way?
It's everything I've experienced with Paloma Wash, it's the exact opposite of what you look at.
I think everything goes to Salt Creek.
So that
You
it's
think,
going
yeah,
up.
Right.
okay. All right.
It just seems like such a shame because right now we have some empty land. Given 5 or 10 years, there won't be any.
One other thing I was talking to Bill about is you see the just outside that yellow, that brownish strip there, Wildcat football practices there. My grandson practices there. If you go through, you walk up the high school and then it empties out into that, and teams do practice on that blue line stream, as they say.
Yeah. We'd probably have a little more difficulty removing that blue line only because there's riparian that's kind of established there. So I was looking at the total cost, $27 million. And yeah, it felt like Fred Sanford for a sec there when I first heard it. It just seems like really, really high. And when I looked at some of the breakdowns, the cost, maybe the very first one was a question, what does mobilization mean? That's $1.1 million. What is that? Is that engineering schematic designs? And
Typically, yes, and getting everything on site. Also, earthwork, I think, well, that's on a separate line item. I mean, some of that is passed on if a general contractor bids it that way. And this is just put in to make sure we don't exclude that as a possible cost.
okay. So that's design and engineering is what mobilization is. I was just kind of trying to figure out, I saw the bottom line 27.3 and worked my way backwards from there. And
That's the Scott Road Bridge.
I guess my question is how do you feel as community services director if this is something that's even something feasible or could ever really happen with that cost? I mean, that's a lot of diff funds and fees and Quimby fees collected. I mean,
I would never recommend expending that much from the diff for a single park. I would recommend that, and what our plan of attack would be, is to really shop this around with a number of grants, as well as jointly with the school district, who has certainly gotten bonds to do some improvements, and they may want to weigh in on this.
okay. And you say we haven't talked to the Paris High School District at all about this yet, or even got their feeling if it's something they're interested in coming to the table? What's happened so far there?
So about 6 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, we did meet with the superintendent and inform them of some of our hopeful plans for the future, and they were very interested because I think for the most part they're tired of having to transport their kids up to drop zone and dealing with all of that, and they know they have issues with parking and traffic at this school site. So they are very interested, and so I think the next step would just be to approach them. If this is the design concept that the commission likes, then we also have the option of just we could phase this and take care of just the design work first with a harder estimate. So this is a very 30,000 square foot level estimate of what the cost could be, but once you get to the final, the more formal design and working drawings, we could find that the budget can be trimmed down significantly, and then the project itself could be phased. It doesn't need to be built all at once. And I'll give you a good example. The city of Riverside had built Orange Terrace Park, which is just off of Van Buren, and I'm trying to think of a cross street that's Troutwine in that area. The original park was part of a dedication from the housing developer. They took care of, I want to say it had to have been at least 20 acres initially, and then the city came in and did community center, library, and an additional field, which was probably another 20 acres. And at that time, it was around $23 million to do. Now that was 10 years ago, maybe. So, you know, with inflation and then materials, all those things change over time, but something that is approximately the same footprint, more sticks and bricks, still had a pretty high price tag of $23 million.
So you're saying there's a chance?
There is a chance. I'm saying that we have to start somewhere. And again, if the commission feels that this is a good design to move forward on, then our next effort would be to budget money just for design and hard estimate services.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Croy.
I think Tom was before me.
Sorry, Tom.
Well, following up on the cost of building it, what about the cost of maintaining it? Have we got a budget in mind for that?
No, and this is really early for that, but we do know, you know, as the city grows, there'll be new costs across the board. You know, one option is certainly the general fund would have to absorb it if there were no other sources, but if there's an offset from the school district for operating costs, if there's maybe an opportunity like we have with the CSAs and the tax districts to cover some of that cost, there might be a new tax opportunity in the future. I'm not advocating for taxing residents more, but we do know as more and more families move into town, there's a bigger impact on our services, and so there is that opportunity as well.
A couple things. Marty, as far as the size of the skate park, which you were concerned about, it's almost an acre, which is pretty significant.
It is. It didn't show it there.
Yeah.
I mean, I
yeah.
didn't see it there.
Yeah. The other thing, too, is if you look at this aerial, too, that park is going to be the completion of that triangle right there. And I think that that's very exciting when you have the tie-in there with the high school. And I think it just makes sense from just even a visual standpoint that is a significant chunk, and I think it'll look really good.
I think we have to do what we have, and if that's what we have available, we need to grab it and run with it.
And I like that you put a skateboard park on there, you know, that was a good suggestion by Commissioner Rosen at the last one to kind of take a little pressure off of the existing one, so I'm kind of glad to see that as.
And something I didn't really highlight much is you look at the on this map on the screen at the corner of Evans and Coruscant, that is the high point of the site, and it slopes down pretty immediately and drops in. And so if you look at this design here where the skate park's in the corner, that was done with some intent. As people drive on Evans, they'll be able to look down into the skate park instead of the other way around, which means the residents that are on the west side of Evans aren't impacted by the noise or the visual concern that they typically might have. We do have within the budget the option to light the skate park as well. And also, for point of reference, City of Fontana's skate parks are somewhere in the 1 to 2 acre range as well, so they're pretty sizable. But this was done with security in mind. As you can see, there's that sort of loop road driveway that goes around the outside perimeter. Again, another way to try and enclose and contain the access and activity to the skate park so folks aren't necessarily jumping into the skate park from Evans. They have to come into the site. It's all gated, that sort of thing.
Cool. And the fact that it's on the high point gives you some good grindage opportunities, dude.
All right, any other concerns, thoughts? Should we go ahead and encourage staff to proceed ahead, or? Sure.
Are we going to charge? Are you thinking of a charge to use the skate park?
Well, that will depend on what the council decides on the next council meeting on the 16th. If it's supervised, then yes, yeah, we have to charge. If it's not supervised, then no, they would have the option to just come in.
But haven't we already agreed that if it's not supervised, there's going to be problems? As there are at Audie Murphy?
I think any unsupervised facility is always going to have problems. As I called around to other agencies, like Elsinore, who just recently went from supervised to unsupervised, they have problems, of course, but they're minimal problems. There's problems in everything. When you supervise, there's problems. There's a certain amount of due diligence the attendant has to do, and if they miss something, then that is part of the liability. But Lake Elsinore is a good case study. They went the other way, and they have minimal problems. But it's in their perspective and their experience, it has not swayed them from the decision they made. They're keeping it unsupervised.
Okay.
What about supervising the pool?
Always, there is no choice in that. That's a state law. So yeah, there's a whole aquatics programming component and staffing component to that that actually all three of us are very familiar with. We've all pretty much supervised aquatics at one point in our career. It's no small task, and it's taken very seriously.
And expensive.
Yes.
Got to pass Measure DD. All right, so any other comments, thoughts?
No.
All right, so I say proceed ahead, and thank you so much for the presentation, and I think you're on the right track. I think it's just a sense of the commission that they're on the right track and to proceed ahead.
I agree. Yes.
Okay. Our next item is 8.2 Lyle Marsh, very similar presentation. We're going to provide comment and look at the Lyle Marsh conceptual design and the master plan for that.
Yes, thank you. This one is certainly a little more straightforward. The history on this is the park was inherited from the county in 2008, and staff, whether it be through EDA, then the city through Valleywide, then the city directly has been really maintaining this park somewhat to a bare minimum. It is seen mostly as a passive park because it has limited amenities. There's a couple shelters, there's an open playing area, field area, and then planters around. It's right next to Chester Morrison Elementary, so we know there's a lot of traffic through there before and after school, and then on the weekends, certainly the families like to use it. As we talked about before, there was a tour that we all went on to sort of experience what a universally accessible playground could look like. And we identified this as an ideal location for it because of its adjacence to a school site, as well as really space for a playground to be installed, since there isn't one there now. And so, as you can see on the screen, this is the aerial map. You'll probably be very familiar with the park site. You've seen it before. You've been there before. And this is the design concept that RGM came up with staff on. And as you can see, I'm going to kind of walk through this a bit. We want to continue this healthy Menifee experience by including fitness stations around the park. So you can see every place there's that sort of half moon DG looking area is the location of an exercise fitness station. A little later on, obviously, in the next item, Bruni will be going over a staff report about grant award, and I'm not going to steal her thunder, but we have certainly some opportunities to cut down our costs as a result. But as you can also see, the incorporation of a DG path along the back planter will help complete a circuit around the perimeter of the park. That doesn't currently exist. And then over toward the planter and the school parking lot, you can see there's the incorporation of a tot lot for 5 to 12 and for 2 to 5. Again, these are intended to be tailored specifically for those with disabilities or handicaps and seniors who can use the fitness stations around there. The elements, we didn't call those out specifically, but there's in the budget line items to accommodate that type of play equipment that typically runs more expensive than our normal standard. And The existing picnic shelters are essentially straddling each side of that. So as families come to play and enjoy it, they can sit and picnic at the same time. This plan does not propose fencing in this at all. It proposes keeping it open. There's essentially a natural buffer between the parking lot level and the playground level with these four, I'll call them jelly bean planters, that have seating in front of each of them. That's where parents would congregate, watch their kids, and ensure they're not running past them into, vehicle traffic in the parking lot. Regarding the parking lot, we are proposing the expansion of the school parking lot. Again, this would be a partnership with the school district to do this, so that way parents that come in to pick up their kids can feel free to use the park portion of the parking lot as an in and out, and also the restroom building that's there adjacent to the planter on the north side of the park would be accessible to really anybody during operating hours, so from dawn to dusk. The other inclusion is trash enclosure that's on the south side, the east side of the park. This is a new standard, obviously, we've had in the city since all of our design details have been done. You'll see them at all of our parks now, and we felt it was important to include that since there is no dumpster location in the park now. We're increasing the capacity of the park. It's probably important to incorporate facility for disposal of waste. Those are all pretty much the major components to this. The price tag on this is about $1.9 million. Again, this can get reduced by formal and final engineering and design work, and also by grants, which we may already have chipped away a little bit at already through some work that Bruni's done. So that's pretty much the overview, and can answer any questions you have.
All right, first question comes from Commissioner Rosen.
Could you go back one more to the general, that's it, all the way to the east, that large open space? What is it?
That's a town center.
That's the Menifee Town Center that was developed by Regent.
Afraid you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Afraid you were going to say that.
He wants his regional park.
All right.
Badly.
Well, just to remind the commission, there is a map pending. It was an extension was granted to Brookfield Residential for pretty large area of land they purchased over on the east side of the 215, which was originally approved for golf course with some residential. Brookfield is going to be coming back in with a map to redesign that and incorporate a 30-plus acre regional park. And that concept, when they submit it, will be coming to you guys for review.
Oh,
So
how nice.
we are getting close to that. I know you're eager to see that regional park. We're getting there. It's just a matter of time.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Croy.
Yeah, on this particular view, the shrub areas, and then if you could forward to the conceptual. I go by this park a lot, and the shrub areas are nice, but it's shrub area. It's unusable space. I mean, you can, if you have you're by one of those trees and you're having a picnic, you look over there and it's shrub area with the crushed bark, I believe it is.
Don't tell Alan that you're saying this.
I know, because Alan put a lot of work into making those things really nice, and they are nice, and they're really nice looking. But do they serve any real purpose other than looking nice? I think it would be should be considered to actually open that back up to having it be usable and a play field.
So the planter areas that you're referring to are actually sloped, which makes them a little difficult for athletic play. And so they essentially become, if you turf them, they're non-functional turf. And so right now, the conversion projects that Alan assisted with are essentially work to transition the same planter areas from rotor irrigated really old ground cover to this point-to-point, which is what's there now, and has resulted in a pretty significant reduction in our water consumption. So that's been the use of those recently. They are certainly aesthetic, but they have stayed in good condition. Our only challenge has ever been keeping the fence
Right.
from being destroyed. The only additional change to this design could be replacing the fence with something more resilient. But the planters, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot we can do with them.
Okay, thanks.
So I do have a question. So regarding the parking lot, we're talking about expanding it, so about how many spaces are we going to be adding to what Chester Morrison School has?
It's up to 10 plus 2 ADA, but I know they just finished their solar project there, and we'd have to do a little engineering work to make sure that we're not impacting that and those structures. That's an estimate.
Okay. And then secondly, you were talking about those jelly beans, those 4 green sitting areas. And at first I thought those were going to be something like what we saw when we did our tour, and they had those fitness stations where moms and dads that are working out are also eyeballs on the kids that are in the play thing. I thought that was a pretty neat concept. I just wonder if that's something that could replace those sitting with exercise, or maybe even have something very similar to that, but maybe on the west side of the Todd area. I just really liked seeing those play areas or exercise stations facing the playground. This looks like a great opportunity.
Yeah, we talked about that with the consultant, and what I advised them of is, let's present it as is, and then if we would like to increase the number of stations, I think on that west side of the playground is probably the best bet. That way, you do have that visibility. It's right there. We can. I wouldn't necessarily replace any of the existing stations with those. I would just add to it, right?
And can you then, with those jelly beans, can you describe really what that is? Is it a bench?
There's park benches, and then behind them in the green area, that's a planter. Those are point-to-point planter areas for shrubs that are tall enough to discourage the kids from running past or anything like that. It's not turf.
So it's more of a chicane to keep the kids from getting into the parking lot.
Yes, it's again a natural barrier for them.
All right. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, concerns?
Well, regarding the parking spaces, you mentioned right now there's 2 ADA, because the playground's going to be for the benefit of folks who do have difficulty.
Correct. Yeah. There's certainly opportunity to do more ADA.
I'm thinking.
I think the reality is that an ADA vehicle can use a regular parking spot as well.
Mm-hmm.
The two are identified as really just meeting the code. So increasing it to more would certainly displace other park users as well. So there's that balance. It just means we have to convert some of these. When you do ADA parking spots in the middle of a parking lot,
Mm-hmm.
you have to do a path of travel from their parked vehicle over to the ramped access.
Of course.
So that really could reduce the number of spots altogether as well. So in other words, you can't convert one ADA for one regular, because one ADA takes up.
There's more to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's just, of course, this is going to become an attraction for those people.
I agree.
So we may have to figure some logistics out on that.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I wish there was a way to reconfigure that parking area. So it looks to me like a knuckle. And if we could even just move the entire playground area, just shift it slightly west and buy just a little bit more space, so you can almost have just a mini cul-de-sac, but the parking spaces are parallel parking, and you can almost get 15 cars or something in there, and you know what I'm saying?
You're saying shift the playground to the west?
yeah, just to buy more parking space, because it's just all real tight right there because of where we're placing that parking lot. It only gives you that much to work with as far as parking, ADA. So very similar to where you have those 2 ADA parking spaces. If you were just to continue that pattern all the way up and around in a complete circle, you'd get, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, we can propose that to the consultant. I wouldn't want to encourage moving the playground too far to the west because it will reduce the amount of playable space in the turf area.
I get that.
Yeah.
But I think you're only moving it 10 feet. And then you don't have to even have reciprocal access between this little parking knuckle versus the schools, and you keep them separate, and then you don't have that whole logistical nightmare when they've got solar panels and all those kinds of things to consider. If it just were knuckled off in a cul-de-sac type of pattern, but continue that where the ADA parking all the way up and around, I don't know.
Okay.
That's just the designer in me looking for ways of squeezing out some more space.
Mhm.
Do we see the aerial? See how that works with the school? Yeah. Yeah, it looks like that edge of the western edge of the parking lot, looks like it could come down a little bit further and get some more squeeze.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway,
thank you.
just a thought. If you want to throw it at, what were those guys' names?
RJM.
What's his name? I'm trying to think. Zach?
Zach?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it. Okay, anything else? We say proceed ahead. All right, let's move to our, I believe it's our final item 8.3, and that's the acceptance of an ExoFit Fitness Grant Award. Ms. Reyes.
Thank you. So as we mentioned at the last meeting, staff submitted 3 applications for the purchase of outdoor exercise equipment from ExoFit. They were offering a matching grant, and our proposal included 8 machines for the following 3 parks, which were La Ladera, Lyle Marsh, and E.L. Peterson. The grant, of course, cuts our costs by 50%, a little over, because they awarded $6,500. For each park, the cost would be a little over $12,000. And so we will be going to council on the 16th to accept the grant award, and once that is approved, we will submit a purchase order and get those ordered and have Joe do what he does. And take it from there.
Yeah, good
Thank
job.
you.
So in this item, we are seeking recommendation from the commission to the council to accept the award, or the awards as presented in the staff report.
I move that we do just that we recommend that the city council accept the award.
Okay. And a second. All right, we have a motion from Rosen, second from Croy. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Good work.
Thank you.
Yep, keep up the good work. Hopefully there's lots more of these where this came from. All right, let's go to item 9. Parks in progress is 9.1.
Thank you. Only 2 updates to provide on item number 8, Evans Park. As you've seen, their conceptual design is being reviewed, was reviewed by you tonight. And then on item number 12, we've only called it Cottonwood Park because of the development name. This is specific communities. The plans check number 6 comments were returned to the applicant, and the building plans are in review. I think I may have mentioned at the last meeting that their applicant is exactly 1 permit over their threshold for having to have the park constructed, so they are very eager to get this built. They can't do anything else at all until this is done. So they're trying to quickly correct plan checks and get it all back in so Mylars can get signed. They're very, very close. They've done quite a lot of corrections the last couple rounds. So Their goal is to have this constructed in 6 months' time. We will see.
All right, great. Yep, 9-2.
All right, good evening once again, Commissioners. The Recreation Division had a very successful month of October. Starting off with our contract classes, I mentioned at the last meeting that we were going to start a ballet folklorico class, and that class has just taken off. We're full in all the sessions, so that's exciting to see. Our Taekwondo class continues to do well, and then we are going to be starting a tennis class in the month of November. We finally have a tennis instructor back on board at Spirit Park, so we're excited about that. Case and Aceros activities continue to be very popular. Of course, our free lunch program that we have there for the seniors is always a great chance for them to come and congregate together. So Case and Aceros classes are up. They took a field trip in October to Oak Glen to go and pick out pumpkins and visit some of the shops up there. They had a good time with that as well. Lazy Creek Rec Center, we had the after school program continues to be successful. Tiny Tots still is completely full every session. We have a waiting list for each session, so that's a great program that's very well received by the community. Our facility rentals are up. Our indoor facility rentals are up quite a bit, as well as our picnic shelters, so those have been great. Of course, having our park attendant out there to make contact with each renter is always a great benefit for them, so they feel secure in having their shelter reserved, clean, and ready for them to use. And then, of course, one of our main highlights was our special events for the month of October, which I know a few of you were at the Fall Festival event. It was, over 8,500 people in attendance. We're going to have a full recap for you guys at the December meeting, which will include pictures, testimonies, some of the feedback on social media, and then, of course, some figures on how we did in terms of cost recovery. And I'm very excited to see how that turns out, but I think we did really well.
And one of the things that Jason and I have been working on is a format for every event so that we can bring that back to you for a wrap-up. I think it's important to keep the commission informed about the progress of these. Pictures and feel-good things are great, but we also know that part of this operation is business-oriented. We have to make sure we're keeping our costs down as well.
That's appreciated.
Definitely. And then the other special event we had in October was our Youth Advisory Committee participated in the Anti-Bullying Summit. It was a regional event in the city of Ontario. Just turned out really was a great event for everybody involved. We had 5 different cities that came, over 250 kids listening to the testimonies of different youth groups. Very proud of our Youth Advisory Committee chairperson, Ashley Fisher, who just absolutely nailed it on her presentation. And we just continue to get great feedback on that. And then they participated in a happiness sprinkling at the same time, which is where they had signs twirling around encouraging people to basically just be kind to each other. And it was just a really great, well-received event. So very proud of the kids in the Youth Advisory Committee.
Jason, can you also share about the Youth Advisory Committee's input regarding skate park, please?
Definitely, yeah. So that recommendation will be going to the City Council at the November 16th meeting, I believe it is. And I think I had mentioned this to a couple of you in passing that the feedback was really tremendous. They felt very empowered to make some decisions, and the best thing about it wasn't they had some good conversations, they asked good questions, and they gave solid feedback. They were in here for probably about an hour and 35 minutes just on that one topic. And the chair did a great job of putting things together and making sure everybody understood exactly what they were voting for and exactly what was on the table. And I feel like the recommendations they came up with were great on both sides, whether it's supervised or unsupervised. So confident in that recommendation moving forward to City Council.
Thank you.
And then just to highlight some of our upcoming events in November, I would talk about the one that occurred today, but we'll save that for the December meeting just to say that it was a great event and glad to see everybody there. But we'll get into more of that in November with pictures and such. But we do have our Veterans Day ceremony next Friday, November 11th at 10 a.m. at Wheatfield Park. We hope to see everybody there. Commissioner Holcomb will actually be our keynote speaker, so we're excited to hear what he has to say. We are going to have free food afterwards for veterans. The first 150 veterans will receive free hot dogs provided by the Menifee Valley Cupboard, and I think also Rotary played a part in that as well. And it's actually going to be cooked and prepared by the Knights of Columbus, so they wanted to help out in any way, and that was the best thing that we could come up for them. And then we have our SMAF Inland Empire Awards and Installation Banquet. As you know, the City of Menifee was selected as the Agency of the Year for that Awards and Installation Banquet. That'll be in 2 Thursdays at 5 p.m. in Rancho Cucamonga at their Central Park. And then getting into December, just a couple things to put on your radar. Breakfast with Santa is Saturday, December 3rd from 9 to 1 at Queso. There's 3 different seating times. And then our big Christmas tree lighting ceremony on Saturday, December 10th from 4 to 9 at the Town Center Roundabout. And that concludes my report. If I answer any questions you may have.
All right, thanks so much, Mr. Hendricks. And then 9.4 Capital Improvement Program. So now batting, we have Mr. Joe Solano.
Yes, batting 1,000.
Right.
Good evening, Commissioners. We've kind of been a little busy. We got a little capital improvement project with the park surveillance system in a combination with an IT network upgrades. The IT network upgrades will be between Casey Center and Lazy Creek, and that'll give them, I want to say, internet access into the city, webs and all the servers and everything like that. So as you can see, the first picture on the left, top left, that's the antenna on the traffic signal light at Evans and Newport, and that shoots down to Lazy Creek. The far right picture on the top, that's the other reach back area that'll bounce back and forth between Lazy Creek and KC Center. And the center picture, that's the antenna that goes from the traffic signal light pole to the KC Center. So that's your kind of triangle that everything's going to feed back from to Lazy Creek and back and forth, then into the KC Center server. Also, the 2 bottom pictures, you can see the new cameras that were put in at the corner of KC Center and also on the roof line. The camera on the right-hand side, lower picture, that's kind of directed to the entryway driveway coming off of Newport, so we can capture license plates or anything else, or as they're leaving or coming in, and just capture what's coming in and out of there. As you can see on the picture on the left side, we have a camera also kind of towards the back corner of the building. It's almost visible, but you can see it. It's kind of like the camera that's on the other picture, but that also captures the entrance coming into Evans. So we can capture license plates or anything that we need to coming into that center from there. Over at Lazy Creek, these are the cameras that are going in. One at the little storage shelter next to the playground. We'll have a camera there. The other camera will be on the right-hand side is on the parking lot lighting pole. That'll capture the entryway into the driveway and towards the building and into the playground area behind the building. And then at the bottom pictures, those are AMR. The picture on the left is at the basketball court at AMR. You can see 2 cameras there. Then following the pictures to the right, that is the softball field pole. And that also will capture some of the areas within that restroom area towards the parking lot. And I just gave you a little close-up of the same pole to the next picture. And then at the last picture is the picnic shelters, where the cameras will kind of pick up the playgrounds more from the picnic shelter into the playground area. As far as capital outlays, we only did one little project, which is down on Evans towards La Piedra from Newport. We just renovated the turf there. We kind of scarified it a little bit, overseeded and topsoiled it. I know people can say, well, why are we redoing this turf? Well, the turf is kind of part of that community, part of that landscape already, so we're just kind of beautifying it a little bit, make it come back up. And you can see on the right-hand side how it's coming in pretty nice. So it just makes that little community across the street from the school and throughout that area a little greener.
Marty, do you want to?
Yeah, I just have a question for Jason on the special events update. I noticed what's not there. Why wasn't the menorah lighting added?
Well, the menorah lighting isn't currently a city-sponsored event, so what we have on the update is all city-sponsored events.
It doesn't say that, of course, it just says special events. But can't we note it so that anybody who is going to want to know about it could see it?
So all of the community,
You could add that it's not sponsored by the city, private sponsor, or whatever you want to call it, but still list it so that people would know about it.
so what we can do is, and what currently exists is the community calendar is online, and that event is listed there. If you'd like, we can add a slide to the regular monthly update that shows a list of all community events, which essentially would be a sort of a printout of everything that's on the community calendar for the month.
Be wonderful.
Okay. We can include that.
Thank you.
Mr. Gidroyce.
Joe, concerning the cameras, do we need to put up, or have we talked about or even thought about putting up signage? Hello, you're on camera. As a
Yes,
deterrent
those
and
signs will
also
go, yeah.
Because of privacy.
Yes, yeah, we'll get the signs up once everything gets, we got about, I think, a week before everything becomes active. So yes, we'll be incorporating signage throughout the parks and KC Center and everything that
So
lets
the
everybody
public
know
will be
we got.
aware, maybe also post it on the city website.
Yeah, we can do that too, sure.
Okay. That's what I wanted to ask. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Solano, proceed ahead.
Thank you. Just the maintenance division report, kind of been active in some work orders here. We've had a couple of other bigger projects that we've been doing, so and trying to do our regular maintenance. So we're right now at 90% on our work orders, and I think that's pretty good. Just some irrigation issues that we're dealing with, and then our year to date is at 98%. So I think staff is doing pretty well. You know, I forgot to mention in the beginning that we had Bryce off for the last 2 weeks. Bryce has been out on maternity leave. His wife gave birth to a baby girl, huh? Maternity leave, I'm sorry. Paternity leave. He'll be back on Monday, and I can't wait for him to come back. Kenny has actually been sitting in for him, and he's done a very great job. So I thank Kenny for that. I thanked him today at the end of the day for, being there for me as Bryce has been gone, so.
I did want to add one thing on the security cameras. They become really useful once they're active to sort of capture the activity in the park. We've seen a lot of wire cutting going on in the parks, in addition to other things. And now, once these are live, we'll be able to really, follow up on some of those and provide that footage to the sheriff's department.
Are they just actually stealing wire or just vandalizing?
In some cases, they're stealing, but most recently, the last couple of weeks, they've just been cutting. Now that we've seen that be a precursor for pulling. Sometimes they'll come on one night and cut, and just to see what happens, and then they'll come back the next night or two later and pull it. But I think we've gotten ahead of it now, and these cameras are really going to discourage that activity.
Good. Tom?
Are the cameras sharp enough to capture a license plate? I've worked at places, we had cameras, they robbed us blind, and then we looked at the video, we couldn't figure out what it was.
I believe so, especially those two at the Casey Center on the roof that captured the two driveways coming in. That's what they were designed to do. That's what they were spec'd out to do.
Great.
On those two.
And at Case and Acero Center, is there one pointing at the co-op building?
The co-op building will also have some. They just actually tomorrow they'll start putting those in. That's why I didn't have any pictures on that side.
Very
But
good.
they'll be on the back side and on the front side to capture anything through there.
Awesome.
Yeah, especially that back side where the resident kind of is. And then the maintenance division, they've kind of been busy. They did the slope behind the baseball diamond, kind of flattened that out. I'm not sure if you noticed it while you were out there at the fall festival. They started the project, but I think it was just a lot of work to do. So we went in there and we got some bids to have a contractor come in. They had big front end loader, and I believe it was four 5-yard dump trucks or 10-yard dump trucks or something like that. They were huge. So they did that work in like 3 days. So after that, they contractor went in and did the fun rough removal. staff went in there the next 3 days and did the fine grading and cleanup of the edges and everything, got everything ready for this Saturday's event. Of course, we've also prepped the historical monument site for today's event, which went very well, and we'll be preparing the next 5 sites to set the other 5. I'm hoping to plan that for next week.
Excellent. So I got a quick question. What are we going to do long-term in that, where we took the little knoll down? Is that going to be turf, or are we going to put wood chips, or what are we doing?
No, actually, what we'd like to do is put mow curbing with stabilized DG in the middle to use it like the initial idea was to use it for vendors up there this last weekend. So in prior events, we'll be able to use that space for those things, for more activities. It'll be more of a usable space, more than just the knoll over there. And I like it too because it opens up that park. It opens up the soccer field to the baseball diamond. You can see, when you're either on the baseball diamond, you can see the soccer field. Vice versa, before you couldn't see, you just saw a little knoll. So I like it as far as for security reasons and everything else. It'll be nicer to be able to see that.
Okay, and then one other question on the monument, and I can see it's there covered in tape, but behind it is, I'm assuming that's like the Bobcat or the piece of equipment that actually set it, and so, did you
Yes.
see that happening, and can you tell me?
I did not see that happening, but the way these are manufactured, on the side of the monuments, there's 2 holes, and they're threaded, and there's a threaded nut in there that and they also came with a special bracket. So you bolt a bracket onto each side, and it's got a pin, and you just put your strap across that, and that makes sure, and that kind of balances it off. So that forklift was used so we don't have to get up in the street. We stayed in the parking lot. We just come up with the curb a little bit, and it was like kind of a pettibone. It reached out, and it set it in.
All right,
So
I'm just absolutely curious as to how that works. Maybe I'll get a chance to peek at one when it's getting set.
yeah, the next ones will be
Yeah.
we'll be using the skip loader. So because it'll be the only one that'll kind of be with the next one they'll be in is the one at the Romoland School.
Yeah.
Not sure how we're going to be able to get in and around through that area because we can't really get on the 74. So that might be the only one. We'll figure that one out. But
Okay.
staff is pretty good at figuring stuff out there. So
why
I
we
stay out of their way. I just say, here's what we need to do, and they figure it out.
That's why
And
we
you can see
like-
the 2 differences there from once we set it in and in today's event, how staff cleaned it up really well.
We're going to send the Mott's a bill for that landscaping work. No, great job on that.
Thank you.
All right, I think that concludes that, right? Yes. So we are now on item 10, Commissioner reports on committee activities. Anybody have anything? I don't either. So let's move to future agenda items.
Before we do that, Robert, any news on Valleywine, everything status quo, where are we?
I'm glad you brought it up. I had a note here to give you just a quick oral update. If you came to council meeting last night, you noticed there was a public speaker. The chair of the Valleywide Board, Matt Duarte, addressed the council with concerns about the requirements on plan approval for all of the landscaping along Newport, so from Antelope to Menifee Road. The latest status is that Valleywide has been approved to submit Mylars, which is the final step. And what Mr. Duarte was referring to last night about a new requirement isn't really a requirement at all. Staff has simply asked for a note on the plans to remind Valleywide to ensure they are responsible for replacing any shrubs or trees that have died since the first plan submittal had been received. Again, it's a pretty standard note that goes on a lot of plan sets. That's the only thing he's referring to. It is not new. It is just simply a note that goes on the plans. But we have essentially approved all other outstanding items. We just need the Mylar submitted, and we will sign and give them a permit to start work.
And that was made clear to council?
Yet we've been keeping council updated offline outside of the meetings, but they understand.
Understood what the process is. And what about the pipes that are going in there? We were last talking about them trying to use something that is not in our code.
Correct. That was one of the issues that they essentially agreed to. They are going to use the city standard. They cannot use the blue lock pipe system that they had proposed. And as far as the rest of the valley-wide items, the landscaping along Antelope, along Menifee, and along La Piedra are still areas of concern. There's an outstanding notice of violation that was issued on August 2nd. We still have not received a response back from Valley-wide about what they intend to do with that. They earlier had agreed to turning the irrigation back on to regenerate the turf. I don't think that's occurred yet, as we believe they had actually sprayed the turf to kill it. And so, if they watered it now, you may just only see weeds coming up. So there's that concern. And then on the detachment application, I think the update I provided at the last meeting was that the LAFCO wanted to hire a third-party consultant to go over the finances of the application. They have selected a firm who has a deadline of November 28th to deliver a report on, which will get incorporated into the scheduled public hearing in January.
You'll have access to that report prior to the meeting.
You better believe it.
Do we,
One last thing, are they watering those trees, or they told us that when they came here, they were watering the trees, they looked like they were dying. I don't believe they were really doing it.
We've been told they've been watering them with a water buffalo truck, a trailer truck, basically. However, I've seen very limited success with that management.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
quick question, do we know the name of the firm that they hired?
Tossig and Associates.
Thank
Are
you.
you familiar with them?
I am, they're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
They do spreads and assessments and that kind of thing for tax
Yeah.
purposes and LLMDs.
For your future agenda items on item 11, there was a request to perhaps update the title of the second arrow point there, next gen housing fee analysis. So it was a little more clear what it was. If you'll recall, when initially when Quimby ordinance was presented, it really took into account the limited dwelling unit types that were on the list, and then their associated people per dwelling unit. This was to try and address concerns of what that next generation housing product would present, because it could essentially push the per person per dwelling unit over 3.164. And so this item was really to bring back to you all what a potential person per dwelling unit number might be, and how that could impact our Quimby collection or Quimby assessment for in lieu fees. If there isn't any objection, if you would like staff just take the freedom of rewording this so it can reflect that, you will see a different title on here in the next.
That's okay.
I think that's a good idea, because nobody knows what next gen means.
Sure.
But we all know what adjust the dwelling unit count for Quimby means, so, all right. Anything else from anybody before we adjourn? All right, good job, everybody.